audio and visual podcast, a weekly discussion about all things guitar building and some random tangents as well, featuring members of the Guitar Builders Collective from all around the world. The Guitar Builders Collective is a like-minded group of individuals that have come together to share their experiences, knowledge, and inspiration for guitar building. Each week you can join us in the live YouTube chat or catch up at a later point. It's also available as audio where you'll miss out on seeing our lovely faces and some of the visuals we share along the way. You can also find the Guitar Builders Collective via our forum, over on Instagram where we share images of members' builds. We've got a thriving Facebook group, and we do hope that no matter what your experience and knowledge is, you'll become a welcome member of this community too. Great, welcome everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
So this is sort of a follow-up with some of the same people on it as one we did last month about 3D printing. Last month we talked about 3D printing in relationship to printing guitars and sort of the process of all of that. Today we're going to talk more about the things, the periphery of guitar building, jigs, etc. But just before we start, I just want to do a quick sort of admin type thing. If anyone's listening to the podcast, not on YouTube, but on an audio somewhere, would you mind sending me a message if you get a moment, either popping over to the YouTube channel and leaving a comment under the video, or via my Instagram, it's @DevlinSons, or info@devlinsons.guitars is my email. I just want to sort of gauge who's listening to the audio and whether it's worth carrying on, because most of the views seem to come on YouTube. So I'm just trying to decide whether we should carry on with the audio or not. Anyway, admin out the way. There we go. So today you'll recognise some people from last time. We've got Jack from JC Guitars here. Hey Jack. Ray from Tasmaniak Guitars. Then below me, Arran from Adair Guitars, who wasn't here last time for the 3D printing, but as some of you may know, has been very involved with 3D printing things for his guitar recently. Then we've got Glyn, Mr. Glyn's Pickups, and then Mark Gutierrez over there.
Hey.
Mark. So look, I just wanted to start off by saying I've had my 3D printer a couple of months now, and when I was trying to decide whether to buy it, I was trying to decide, is it a worthwhile investment? Everyone's saying it's brilliant, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I just did a quick search on things like Thingiverse, also just via Google, for files of things I can print as a luthier, tools for a luthier. And there was so much out there. And that was one of the things that made me think, yeah, I'll just do this, because I wasn't sure I'd have time to learn to make all these jigs straight off. And that'd be a whole other thing that might take up a load of my time. So definitely I was convinced by things like this. So first of all, string pluckery. I've noticed that they've got lots of stuff that's going around on YouTube at the moment, people demoing, but this is a neck rest of theirs. There's a 3 file they had on their website. They also had loads of these. These are gauges for neck templates. So checking at the 1st fret and the 12th fret, the profile of your neck for all different sizes. I thought originally I might just print them off as and when I need them, but I've decided I print off as many as I could. So every time a guitar comes through my workshop and I'm playing on it, I'm now going to use these to test and see if I like this particular neck, which one it most closely matches. So I can start keeping a record of my own personal preference. Because sometimes a guitar comes in, I like this Ibanez neck, but it's hard to kind of keep an exact measurement of that if I want to recreate it or compare it in the future. So I'm finding that not just printing out these tools has become super useful. And then Mark's got some, and I'll just say about yours, Mark. So this is your fret holder for when you're lining up your frets to work. I used to just mask and take mine down on the table. I thought, isn't it pointless having anything more than a bit of masking tape? And this is quite big, but it's quite beautiful as well. And there's something about having a really nice object that kind of makes the process, I think, just a little bit more satisfying sometimes. I had it out today to bring it up for this, and my wife said it looked like something that went with a Ouija board. She couldn't work out what it was. And that's really interesting. I like that. It's made me think more about making my workshop look a bit nicer with more interesting things in it. But I just wondered with all of you here, when it comes to the sort of jigs and things, what type of jigs you use, how you've got them. Obviously, we're going to talk about ones you've made yourself as well. But I know, Glyn, you're going to be quite different to maybe the rest of us when we're making things specifically for guitars. How do you use your jigs or your 3D printer?
Yeah, and you're right, because there actually isn't that much stuff out there for pickup makers. And I started doing stuff on Tinkercad and getting other people to print it way before I got a printer.
Right.
So I haven't really downloaded anything and made anyone else's stuff. You know, I mean, there's heaps. I've had a look. You know, I mean, there's everything you could possibly want in the shape of Yoda. But no, I haven't. It's nearly, like I said, it's nearly all just my own designs for my own little jobs that I need. So yeah, it looks good though. I like that idea of doing of looking at those neck profiles. That's good thinking.
Well, when I was just looking at the tools that are out there, I was thinking they're all things that I would use, but maybe I'll just print them when I need them. And then because we had this show coming up, I thought, well, I have some things on hand to print out, so I'll print out one of them. And when I print it out, it's not really lovely. One thing I like about the 3D printer is the tactile quality of the things that come out of it. The texture of the side that's against the base, and I quite like the surface when it's been printed as well, that's up. And I was thinking, oh, these are quite nice actually. And then I started thinking about, could I use them now? How would I use them now? For various reasons, I've got quite a lot of necks in my workshop at the moment, so it seemed to make sense to take advantage of them and compare all the necks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose finding out what you like is a good thing. When I was taught to make guitars, there's a guy called Gordon Whittam. Now, Daniel know Gordon Smith guitars, yeah?
No, I don't.
From the UK. Gordon Smith guitars. No, really? Oh, shame on you.
I'm going to write that down on my here.
They've been going since the early 80s in the UK consistently. And they're having a bit of a resurrection now. I think somebody must have bought them. I don't know. But the Gordon side of that. Now, Gordon left after, I think, 1,400 guitars. So he left in the 80s sometime, and he taught me guitar making. And he always reckoned that the back of a guitar, C profile, that's it. And they're always comfy, you know, no shoulders at all, always a C. And I've actually found that to be right. Yeah. So I would say
made up, but there's different types of Cs depending on the year that Fender made. Yeah. They're subtly different.
I would say if you can find yourself an L series Strat, then that's got to be the nicest neck ever. Or a lot of the modern Music Man guitars.
I wonder if I could sneak into a guitar shop with these and just do a bit of playing. Oh, this is a nice neck. Let's just sneak that out. Oh, it's that one. That's what I'm going to make next. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, get somebody with you to cause distraction.
Yeah. So some of the music shops near me, the staff seem pretty disinterested a lot of the time. They probably wouldn't notice. If I just play the right music, that will get them out of the room.
You know, I would mostly agree with you guys about the C shape. That was until I got my hands. I wrapped this hand around one of the Ibanez Wizard necks. With the, I fell in love with it the moment I grabbed hold of that thing.
Mm-hmm. I have to second that. Yeah, the Wizard necks are pretty. Mark? They're pretty thin. Yeah, I have like a first year production RG 550. So it's the 1987, I think, RG 550 with the original Wizard neck, and those things are so slim. I want to say they're either 17 millimeters at the first fret. That's thin. Yeah. That's really thin. And that's how I've been sort of designing my guitars. And so I don't actually do a taper anymore. So it doesn't taper as it gets to the heel. If I do a taper, it's 1 mil, right? But most of the times it's just straight across the same width. And then you have the transition to the heel. And that's a really thin neck. You have to really like thin necks too. Like if you're not into thin necks, and you're just not going to like it.
Have you?
Sorry.
Has anyone played a Strandberg with the faceted neck?
Yeah, I have the Endure neck. It's nice. I like it. There's nothing wrong with it. It can be thin too, because whatever, it's a trapezoid. I don't know what the shape is, but as you get to the higher frets, right, it does feel super thin. It's almost like a facet, like a triangle. So it's like there's almost no wood there. There's literally no wood.
You might need to print some new shapes out, Daniel.
I've got to say, this is what string plucker he had, but I'm sure there's others I can get my hold of as well. Oh, by the way, so just to go back to 3D printing away from necks, I've been using red because I think I'm less likely to lose it in my workshop. I put things down, can't find them anywhere. Red feels like the thing that's going to stand out. But what I'm going to probably find is once I put something down, it doesn't matter what color it is, I'm never going to find it. But I don't know. Do any of you make decisions like that about your prints?
So far, I've been so far I've been sort of bought a handful of different colors that suited what I wanted to print. But yeah, I've kind of been thinking a bit more now what I want to look nice and match nice, but yeah, partly visible as well. I used the rail sled that I built. I used white for one of the radiuses, and that's the one I've actually used so far to do the first fretboard. And white obviously is going to get a lot more dirty than the other colors. So I'm rethinking, choosing white for a fretboard radius jig. But yeah, certainly now that I've explored a few different things, I'll pick 2 or 3 maybe that are my favorites.
I feel like the color coding that you've got though makes sense, because when I printed these out, Mark, I printed a few of them out. So Mark made these sanding sticks. I got them from his website. And the suggestion was, Mark, that you just look, Aaron's got some as well. Just stick the sandpaper to it, like double-sided tape. So I was thinking maybe I should have them in color coded with different grits on them. That makes sense.
Can I ask? Hey, so Arran and Daniel, what was the infill that you used on those sticks? Like how much infill is in there?
So I remember when I first came across Ray's guitars, Ray gives advice on what infill to have, and you put advice on the file of what to do. And the Bamboo Lab has some various settings, and all I remember is the setting that was closest to what you'd already said for the amount of infill. So I haven't used these yet, but they feel pretty solid.
I used I think, Mark, in your video, did you say 65% for a stronger one?
If I start there, yeah.
Yeah, so these are printed at 65%, and there's a bit of flex, but not like a great deal. So I kind of went for the thicker fill, and I've also I enlarged it as well, so that's 150%. For sort of a larger one as well. But yeah, in terms of colors, that's what I thought. And I haven't used them yet either, but I thought 3 different colors, 3 different grits. I'm just waiting to get some better quality sandpaper, so I won't have to sort of change them as much. And that's sort of my plan to, they do have enough flex that, when you're sanding it, will move a bit.
Yeah, the flex might be useful.
So Mark, you went with 65% infill there. Now, as a general rule of thumb, I mean, it's you normally wouldn't need to get you sort of hit a point of diminishing returns. Once you hit about 30% infill, you kind of at your best stiffness ratio to amount of filament used. 65% is definitely stiffer than 30%, but it's not twice as stiff. But where you do change things up, I found, is that by going there, you're using a lot more filament and a lot more plastic, and you're adding a lot more weight to the part. Is that one of the reasons why you took it that high?
Yeah,
so you're holding something solid.
Right. So if you wanted to feel like a tool, you would go a little bit heavier. But I I kind of thought that these would be disposable. So I kind of said, you can hover around 65 if you wanted to kind of throw it away. If you wanted to make it a little bit weightier to feel like a tool, you can add more infill.
I guess for the disposable idea, if you're doing less infill, then obviously there's less waste. But also, if you need it, if you're making a tool that you just suddenly think, I can't get into this bit. If I'm going to order a tool from Stu Mac, it's going to take 2 weeks to get to the UK. But to print something off at a low infill, that's like something like this, I guess, is 20 minutes, maybe less. It's like instant.
Where those things like that would be super handy is when you get down to that much filament left on a spool, where at this point in time, I really can't use this. But on the same hand, there's probably 4 or 5 sanding sticks left in that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sit on my shelf for the next 12 months. It gets used up. No waste.
One thing, one file that I found that I've printed off, which is going to be perfect for that leftover filament stuff, is little fret protectors. So for polishing frets. I can't remember where I found this one. It was probably on the Bamboo Lad one, but it's I don't know how many layers, but it's probably only like 2 or 3 layers in that middle part, or something just enough basically to hold. So that uses next to nothing, and you could probably set up when you've got a little bit left on the spool, just fill the tray with them and print them on at a time and see how many you can get before you run out.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have come across this yet, but when you get right down to like the last, I don't know, dozen or so revolutions on the printer on a spool, that last dozen just seems to go on forever. It's you have like 50 grams left and it's using up really, really fast. And then when you get down to right near the end and you're worried, is it going to make it? Is it going to finish this print? It finishes the print and magically there's still like 2 meters left on the spool.
I often wonder, is that because there's so much hidden in the actual printer itself, the way it all feeds round, that I'm not aware of?
Yeah, it's exactly the same with winding pickups.
Yeah,
exactly the same. At the end of the spool, no, I can see it from the spool to the bobbin, and you're going, it's not going to last. And it does. It's amazing. And you go, oh, wasn't that cool? I finished it with just only this small amount left. But it's always like that.
Never thought of that. So, quick question: if you're going to wind a pickup, you've got your spool there, and you're not sure it's got enough on it. How do you know? Do you weigh the spool? Or is it just a guess?
No, I guess.
Right.
And then I sometimes I'm wrong, but believe it or not. No, you can usually judge it. I've wound quite a lot of pickups, quite a few thousand pickups, and you can sort of go, I reckon that'll be. Or what I'll do if I'm low on, let's say it's 43 gauge. Well, I use that on my Filtertron pickups, and there's a pretty low wind on those. So I go, I'll just maybe get away with 1 Filtertron bobbin. And then I end up getting away with 4 or 5 Filtertron bobbins because of Ray's law, as we can now call it.
On that note, just some quick one-off prints that I've done for pickups have been the when you need to convert a humbucker ringed mounted pickup to a direct mounted pickup. I wish I had I don't have a show and tell, but basically I was printing out these kind of little feet. I don't know what to call them. And so if like a humbucker ring mounted pickup, they have these huge routes, just gigantic humbucker routes, right? The whole pickup just kind of slides around in there without a ring. And so I actually printed out these tiny little feet that fit into like the wings, I guess, of the route. And they have 3 holes. So 2 of the side holes are for mounting into the actual wood, and the middle holes to actually mount the pickup. And those I've printed out. I've done them twice already. So anytime I need to convert a guitar from a ring mounted system to a direct mounted system, I just print out these tiny little feet for the wings. And those have been like one-offs, really quick. They're really tiny, and they work really well. And I also use the spongy foam from StuMac to be able to move them up and down.
Mm.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also put a bigger hole in it and put a spring in there.
Yeah.
I suppose, but no, that's cool. So you're with Eddie on that?
Yes.
Mounting, yeah. No, fair play. Me too. Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about this again because I'm new to 3D printing, but this idea of having small things that you can just print off with your leftovers to go in a box in case you need them is really sensible. I was always thinking, apart from printing these off all in advance, particularly for the show, originally I just thought I'll print as and when I need, but anticipating what you might use your print for is really good. Jack, I think the first time I started thinking about using 3D printing as something other than either making a guitar or making, as Glyn said, the Baby Yodas, was when you came on the show and you had something that sort of blew my mind, which was a simple, like solid thing that went into your pickup hole to fill the pickup with a hole in it for a guide for drilling your drill from the pickup route cavity into the cavity control.
Yeah. So I've been using 3D printing like for drill guides basically. So you can do that if you've got sometimes putting a wire in a pickup route can be really awkward, and you need a strange drill bit. And you need to get it, in a strange way. I've done that before. I haven't got any here, but yeah, it's pickup humbucker size, or whatever your pickup is. You print it that size, ever so slightly smaller, and you make sure your printer's got use it as a drill guide basically. The other way I use it as well is so you have to pretend this is machined out of brass or aluminium, but on my guitars I make multi-scale bridges, a bit like so you can see they're sort of angled to take the multi-scale, and these normally have your saddles in there, your brass saddles, what have you. But the difficult thing about machining these on the mill is doing the holes at the back to take the adjustment for your saddle, because that is angled that way, and it's also angled like 3 degrees that way, which is actually quite hard to. It's not impossible, but it just takes a little while to rig up onto the mill or any other way. So a good way of getting around that with 3D printing is you make a reverse, make a plug basically. So this is machined out of brass or aluminium, and you sort of clip it into there, and then that way you can literally put that in a vise. You get a hand drill, and then you can drill your holes through the back there, and it creates that 3 degree compound angle. Super easy, really accurate. No dicking about making strange fixtures on the CNC, and that's quite a good drill guide using 3D printing. But yeah, 3D printing for drill guides.
Yeah, it seems so logical.
I do a lot of that.
It seems so logical that you can make your custom drill guides like this and get rid of any of that sort of worry and fear of doing things. But at the same time, I still haven't really used either Tinkercad or any other kind of CAD program. The initial thought of this felt like it would be a whole new thing to learn. But is it a tough thing to learn doing CAD like that?
It's definitely a steep learning curve. You go from zero to wanting to model a guitar completely. But bits and pieces, I mean, that's quite a bridge piece like that is quite you draw it in plan, you've got your size, you know how big your saddles are, and you just extrude it up.
So for that bridge jig, is that like a one-off too? When you drill, does it ruin the actual 3D print?
I mean, slightly. You definitely use it more than once because you've got quite a big thickness there. The drill bit won't wander, but because most of the guitars I do, they're always different. It's a different multi-scale, so I machine and model the bridge to the guitar. So making a custom jig each time is, it's pence, isn't it? Really. So yeah, it could be disposable totally. I mean, but you can use it more than once.
And do you model your guitars?
Sorry?
Do you model your guitars in CAD first, right from the get-go?
Yeah. So everything's modeled. So you can.
So I mean, in that instance, for you to then turn around and make that negative is draw a rectangle, extrude it over to your modeled bridge, and then it'll take you just a few minutes to create that model for the guide, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's give it a slight offset because the difference between the CNC machine and the 3D printing is it's very close, but more accurate than doing it any other way. But doing it the first time, I completely surprised myself because it was like, why have I been doing it any other way? Because it's just such a simple, quick way of. It's a bit down and dirty. It feels because you're not using all the machines the correct way, but it works really well. So, in my idea, if it works, and there's nothing wrong with it at all.
Before I mention what Barry's just said in the chat, what you've just mentioned, why haven't you been doing it like that before? I definitely had in my mind before I met you and everyone else here talking about 3D printing, that 3D printing was a thing on its own, and you do the 3D printing instead of the woodwork, for example.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting seeing all these variations of how you can use it to support other types of making, as well as being a thing in itself. So even just to support the milling, another process. I found that brilliant, and I feel like so much might change in the future as people become more au fait with it. And I remember Glyn was on a few weeks ago, and he mentioned your daughter just made you a little tool or like bits holder. And the idea that kids, I really want to do this for my kids now, for 3D printer, can learn this quite early on to potentially be a thing that they just use all the time for repairing, for building, for things just around the house, feels so important to me.
Yeah.
I'm going on a complete anecdotal sidetrack here, but a friend of mine works for Bristol Council, and she's been involved with commissioning events for the community. And one of the things she's just commissioned is somebody who's running a shop that basically does repair stuff for people, things that are everyday items that you want to repair. You can bring them to them, they repair it, but they teach you how to repair it. So it's like a knowledge bank of trying to encourage people to reuse in a world where everything's so disposable. And it feels like that's a skill that's totally gone. I remember when I was little, my family always getting things fixed, washing machines fixed, tumble dryers fixed, hoovers fixed, everything. But now we just buy replacement. And it just feels so important. Sorry, that was a sort of random rant. I feel like 3D printing can help bring back that kind of closeness to tools and process that we've sort of lost.
Daniel, I'm just going to go back to the the learning of the program. So I've had my printer for about 3 months now, and I hadn't really used any of the 3D design software. So everything that I've designed so far has been on Tinkercad, and that's been more than enough to do what I need to do. I did download, I can't remember, it was one of the other more complicated ones, and I watched a few intro videos, and then I just realized that for what I was doing I actually didn't need all of those kind of things. So I'd love to get to the stage like Mark, to be able to design a full guitar in 3D and do all that, but I kind of know that that's still a fair way off, and the basic programs like Tinkercad for the jigs and the little tools and all those kind of things has been more than adequate for what I'm doing.
I second that, absolutely. And also, I noticed, I looked at Tinkercad today, doing something today on it, and there's a new little feature on there for doing curves and that. I don't know if you saw that. If you've seen that.
I haven't. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't. My daughter got on there to do something or other, and she went, "Oh, look at this, Dad!" And it was one of those things where you have a line and you have points, and you can pull the points up to make curves.
Okay.
I thought, I might be able to. I haven't actually got a use for that, but
yeah. I know when I did the radius jig in Tinkercad, because it does like a circle in segments. So when, and I think it's like 64 segments. So when you're doing a 12-inch radius, you can actually see the flat sort of segments. So I thought, no, that's no good. So I had to. My workaround was going into Adobe Illustrator, so doing the curve in Adobe, and basically doing the side panels. So I had the perfect curve. And then when I had the 2-dimensional side panel, I imported that into Tinkercad and then could put the sides on and all the additional things. So I found a few workarounds, but yeah, something like that sounds like it's a good little update then.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but yeah, it looked like fun.
Yep.
I mean, I'm probably like you. I only learn stuff on it as and when I need to do a thing.
Yep. Correct.
You know, then you figure it out, and then hopefully you can remember that. But I now, after about a year of Tinkercad, I mean, I've got reasonably good woodworking skills from 25 years of guitar repairing and making. But I can knock it out in Tinkercad way quicker than on a piece of wood. A lot of stuff, you know. And obviously the printer takes longer to do it, but I'm doing other stuff at the same time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Tinkercad is just. Yeah, Daniel, get in there. Just make yourself a little box or something, you know. I think it's getting your head around how it works. Where let's say you wanted to make a hollow box, where you make a solid box, and then you make a hollow and put the hollow in the box. You know, see what I mean? It's just getting your head around those things.
I've definitely got plans of when I'm going to be experimenting with CAD of what I need to do first, and it's very basic things, but they're basic things that are going to be that I need, basically. I feel like I'm so overrun with things at the moment that I want to make sure my learning process is useful, if that makes sense. I feel like I can't take on a whole new thing without an end point to it. I wish I had time to just explore and have fun with stuff. But having an end point, I think, will allow me to make something and explore and have fun with a goal, and then go off on tangents and things.
Nice. Another tool that might be interesting that I've seen recently are those 3D scanners. I don't know if you've seen these tools yet, but a lot of 3D printer manufacturers are selling them. Maybe Ray has something to say about them, but from what I've seen so far, it's like a 3D scanner, and you just basically hold it handheld and you kind of wrap it around. I saw some guy 3D scan his car because he was going to 3D print a new like fender bumper for it or something. So I'm not too familiar with the technology. I know it's kind of pricey right now. That's something to think about for the future, because that technology will actually probably get better. And the second thing that I've noticed as well is there's sort of a sprinkling of companies out there that are now having like AI do CAD. So it's like AI text prompts to CAD. And those things are terrible at the moment, but that doesn't mean they're not going to get any better in the future.
Yeah, Ben, who I've been working with to make these microphone clips that look like skulls, I sculpted them in clay. He has 3D scanned them, but unlike the one Ray just held up, he's got a unit that you put it in and it sort of scans around. But to start with, he did what Owen's saying here. Before he bought his scanner, he just used his phone and just sort of moved the phone around a lot, and it picked up enough data to print off something that was pretty good. Not as good as the fixed base unit that he's got. It was really impressive.
Mm-hmm. I did the LiDAR thing on a tree in my front yard, and I just walked around the whole thing up and down with LiDAR, and it did a fantastic job, even with texture. So it adds like the texture of the tree as well, which was fantastic. So that technology, is also, it's free if you have like an iPhone with LiDAR. Yeah, it's incredible. It's really sophisticated at the moment.
So I've got a question related to what Barry put in the chat earlier on. When you were showing your little guide that you've built to drill at your angles, he said, why don't you put drill bushings in to help with the guide? I presume to make it more permanent than being a temporary thing.
I'll probably do that next time.
I was just going to say, is that just an extra step? Is that...
Yeah.
Like, for me, the idea of the 3D thing is to do it instantly, whereas if you've got to have these bushings, you then got to go and buy the bushings. Unless you're on your mill.
Yeah, but you could probably buy like some small tubing, small diameter tubing that matches up with your drill bit. That's not too difficult to get hold of. I use something similar to my dots anyway, which is aluminium or brass tubing, which is 3 mil, 2 mil, etc. So yeah, it's actually a very good recommendation to use some sort of bushing inside it. Yeah, I didn't actually think of it, but I'm going to seal it
Well, maybe the stealing it gets me onto one of the points I want to ask as well, which is one thing I've really noticed about the 3D printing for these tools and stuff is how many places or how many people just put them up for free and say, remix it, reuse it however you want. It's really interesting. It's that really great ethos.
Yeah, I like that open source sort of community of 3D printing. It's it feels a little bit like a movement, I haven't really put many models up to download because I think a lot of what I print is quite specific to my needs. But even if it's like just like a jig or something or a hook to hold your sander around the workshop, there's loads of that sort of stuff out there which is applicable to most home workshops or even professional big setups. I think even some, I looked the other day, even like the big manufacturers like Festool and like Worth and things like that, they've got their own. If you go to their website, you can download. Festool particularly got like a thing for putting your sanding discs in, so you organise your sanding discs. That's coming from a big company, so even the big guys are recognising that it's the user to keep the brand alive. You can print something that's got their logo on the side, and it's it's free. But to see like big manufacturers like that recognising it, it's a bit of a change, I think.
I think it's really important to recognise that you have various different licenses when it comes to these files that you can pick up. And when you upload your own files at times, you need to be mindful of which license you attach to it. And when majority of the repositories out there that house these files will ask you which Creative Commons license you want to put onto it right from the very get-go, at the very start, by ticking the box. And there's typically 3 choices or 4 choices that there is, but it's something you 100% need to be mindful of, especially if you intend to use that file yourself. So it is like the one I did the other day that I've got down beside me here. I purchased a file, so that file's mine, right? I can print that and use that however I like. And, effectively, what's to stop me from, I printed it on a, nice expensive machine, made it really strong and sturdy. And it does happen to have the designer's name stamped on the side of it. But, in CAD and Blender and all that, I can quickly get rid of that. I can put my own on it. And then I could sell that. But, it's hard for a lot of people to understand that that's still theft. And that's why it's really important to understand those licenses on there. Thankfully, that designer had selected the right one, which was Creative Commons. You were free to buy the file, print it out, use it as much as you like, but you couldn't change it, you couldn't modify it, you couldn't distribute it. Because at the moment you do that, and you'll see this on 3D printing social media groups all the time, and I've had it happen to myself. In one of those instances, I couldn't say much. It was the Hello Kitty Stratocaster pick guard. I suddenly, I gave it away for free, but there was also no remixing, nothing like that. And then I was on Printables, I think it was. And all of a sudden, there pops up a Hello Kitty Stratocaster pick guard. And I thought nothing of it until I realized there's a little change in mine that wasn't changed to try and get around any copyright laws or anything like that. It was just a case of that's what I needed to change to make it fit my guitar. And I suddenly realized that this file that is being given away and this person is claiming that they designed it or, they modeled it and all of this, it was my file.
Yeah.
It was my file. It was straight up. And as I said, it's my file was a rip-off of Hello Kitty, so I couldn't say much there. But I have found my guitar models, being sold as you could go onto Etsy for a while there, and it was that V. You could find someone was selling them trying to sell them for about $500-600 a pop. But I didn't know about it. No one told me, but I was the one that I spent 10-15 hours modeling that thing from the ground up. I started with just a blank screen.
So when they were selling they physically printed them and were selling them. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, part of me was thinking, good luck to you, man. Go for it. I saw the models they had printed, and there was there was a lot of flaws there. There was a lot of flaws with the way the body had been assembled. But at the end of the day, there was 2 reasons that I actually I started the takedown process. So basically I had to contact Etsy, prove to them that is mine, prove to them that, it's got a license against it. This person is breaching it. And then, of course, that person has a chance to respond, and they're saying, no, it's not his. It's, I modeled it from the ground up. I've got a CAD file of it. And they showed photos of the CAD file. And if you know the way they work is basically, yes, they had a CAD file with a mesh imported into it. And that is not a CAD file. That is basically an STL brought into CAD. On the same hand, it was very, very obvious that it was mine because, as you can see, the green pattern across the top of the body is pretty distinctive. You don't copy that by accident.
Yeah.
One of the reasons was, aside from the fact that, that's my work that they're taking and trying to make money from, as I said, the other reason was that they'd done a really poor job. They had done an absolute crap job of it. There was glue marks hanging out. There was pickups that were just really cheap, junky pickups, and I'm sure they were fine. But I have my name on those, and that's my reputation. And when someone is selling a pile of shit, pardon my French, but that's what it was. When they're selling that, people aren't going to know the difference between my work and that person's work. Yeah. And that person was just there to make some coin.
I mean, we've discussed this before with guitars being copied, and I saw one recently that was just an exact copy of one of mine, not made very well. But when it comes to 3D printing, it's even easier to do that and try and get away with it, I guess. So that's that Creative Commons license. What I find interesting is how many people allow the remixing. I think is there a license that allows you to remix it, but still you have to credit the original?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's one I've seen a lot.
And that's very, very common. So the one that majority of my files have, there's no distribution, there's no alterations, nothing. Basically, you get the file and that's the way it stays. You can't change it. And people are more than welcome to reach out to me and ask me to modify for particular pickups or things like that. And I do it all the time. Actually, it reminds me, I got another one that I had to do if I've forgotten about. But and then you have your ones that I can't remember it now. It's basically you are allowed to remix it and change it the way you want it to be. However, credit must always be given to the previous person, the original designer. And then, of course, on top of that, you have basically open slather licenses, where you can take the file, you can modify it. You don't need to, acknowledge the previous designer or anything like that. And I'm actually surprised, just how many people actually use that license. Sometimes I wonder, it's just like, dude, have you clicked that button by accident, or or what's happened to you? But because some of them you'll see that people have put in hundreds of hours of design work, and then they just give it away. Part of me admires that. Part of me thinks they're crazy. Yeah, there's so many different options there, and you need to understand them.
But at this point, like when it comes to CAD, nothing's sacred. Like once you acquire the CAD skills, you can model anything. Anything. You can copy anything. And one of the things I've been doing recently is I've been modeling one of those fractal fret presses. You've seen those, fret press mounts, they're all fractal. I thought, well, shoot, those things are pretty expensive. They're made here in Texas somewhere. I can model that, and maybe I can 3D print it. Maybe it'll work, but I can certainly model it. So I've been modeling that, and that just shows you that you can model anything. Anybody can model anything. Anybody. That's why we see so many like knockoffs coming from overseas. These Chinese copies, because it's just so easy to any guitar in the world, you can model anything. You just need a little bit of skill.
Yeah. I mean, Mark, you'd probably be doing this. You'd know, and Jack, I presume you'd be doing the same. A lot of these guitars, they started off as a photograph. That's all I was able to basically work and to build up the body from a photograph.
Yeah. Bring it in.
You can
bring it and scale it up. Even you can take a photo, or as long as you put like a ruler in or something on you take a photo, so you can just scale it up. Quite easy to do. Take it from a photo on your phone. That's a good starting point.
Yeah. I mean, I think I suggested to you once, Daniel, that if you wanted to, we could always do a live stream where basically I can just share my screen and watch a guitar being modeled in from a photograph or something, and I can have basically in less than an hour a body pretty much spot on, ready to go. Yeah, I'm using some templates in there that I've made previously, but it doesn't take long.
Yeah, no, that would definitely.
Fractal press might take me a little longer.
So what would be good is if you were, for example, to try and convince someone that 3D printing is really useful for guitar building, just to hear maybe if there's any other things that you've printed or made that you think are just so useful that you couldn't live without them now, or that having the printer has allowed you to do things that you couldn't do before.
Got this one. So this, I've got a Letsy shop. I don't know if you can sort of see, maybe more. This is actually a vac jig, so it's a way of holding on to plectrums, little timber plectrums, which I make out of the offcuts. And it's a way of holding down tiny pieces of wood and then machining on the CNC, double-sided. That was modelled in CAD. The plectrums are cut on a little laser, and then I just stick them into the jig. And I've sold quite a few of those sort of things on it. So it's a great way of using up your offcuts again. But it's a combination of 3D printing and CNC stuff, so it's not what everyone has at home, but maybe to show you a little picture. Can I share a little video?
I think you can. It should appear for me to then hit OK.
Okay. Yeah, share that. Maybe share a little video of it machining away. Oh, yeah, turn that down. So you can see tiny bits of wood, and it's got a router cut going around. And it's machining sort of bevel onto the bits of wood, that sort of thing.
That's very cool.
So that's a fun little thing you can do with 3D printing. I don't know how to unshare that now, but yeah. So that's quite a fun thing to do. That was, we probably took about an hour to print. It's got some little rubber O-rings in there to help with the suction, but you could probably print them in TPU to get a better fix. That's quite a fun thing to do. But you can make back jigs for anything then. If you want to hold something down on your workbench, not necessarily for a CNC, you need to hold things down, you can make a little back press that way. Or,
So out of interest with that, Jack, do you remember, had you got in your mind, I want to make little plectrums out of wood, how am I going to do it?
Yeah.
Or were you thinking, oh, look, I'm making these vat presses, or I can make these vat presses. What could I do with a vat press?
It was because I sometimes bring my kids into the workshop, and one day my youngest was like, I really want a plectrum. I was like, okay, I've got some little bits of stuff, and he sort of made them by hand. And I thought, I could do this on the machine. I didn't know how to do it, and I get a little bit obsessed about. I probably had about 100 other things that I should be doing, but I got really caught up with this idea of how to do it with the tools that I had. And then I got a little bit obsessed. I think it's probably about the 10th iteration of trying to make it work. Most of the plectrums went flying off around the workshop, But yeah, it was having that moment of something. Oh, can I do it? Can I do it? And then when you finally get it to work the right route a bit, and became like a real repeatable process, it's like, oh, you feel like you're cheating somehow. You're like, it was quite a nice little moment.
And Glyn, earlier on, you said that you had made things that you got other people to print before you got your printer. What were those things? What things were you using for your pickup building?
Oh, it's kind of prototype stuff. So if I want someone to make me some, there were some blades. If you imagine you got pole pieces on some pickups and you have blades inside bobbins of others, and I wanted some of them lasered for me. Because they can easily laser, 12 mil of mild steel without blinking, Not my laser won't, but others will. So what I wanted to do, rather than pay somebody to laser them out, I just get them 3D printed. So I've got them and see if they fit the bobbins and see if I like them. So there's stuff like that I did a few things of that didn't end up working out. So it was really good that I didn't pay somebody to laser me 1,000 of them. So that's kind of where I started, and then I was just I didn't know about printers, and I assumed that cheap printers were rubbish, so I didn't bother getting one. And then talked to a mate, and he said, "Oh, I'll just give you one. I've got a spare." So there you go. But very useful, and it's very useful. There's a lot of days when the printer will be running, and I've got a laser cutter, and the laser's more useful directly for work, and the laser will be going. So I've got these 2 robots working for me, and I'm here, on the pickup winder, I'm making pickups. So I feel like I've got staff.
Yeah.
But I get to choose the music, which is even better, and I don't pay them. So yeah. Sorry.
It was interesting that you're using it as an idea of prototyping, trying things out. So we've got, we've got it for making guitars, got it for using as a tool, we've got it for trying things out. There's so many uses.
And jigs, like all of us, I often have to drill 6 holes in a straight line, and the drill bit wander is just a pain. So just making just that, those, I don't know how many guides I got now for doing 6 things in a straight line, but it's because it's really hard to actually do that. It's really hard to make 6 holes in a straight line otherwise. And the amount of ferrules on the backs of Telecasters you see that are wonky.
Yeah. The amount of drill guides I've made out of wood which haven't been straight enough is also annoying.
Yeah, and then you find somebody. Yeah, you find somebody with a milling machine who can do it out of steel for you. Yeah, so. But I've made. I mean, I've got interesting that vacuum thing. I've got a similar thing that I've made, which is for the vacuum potting of pickups. So that attaches to the top of the wax pot, and the vacuum goes in here. I did that on Tinkercad, printed it.
Yes.
And the black rim, but then the the rubber in here, I laser cut that rubber. That's rubber stamp material. So that's like a gasket that I lasered. So it's a very similar thing. And I had someone before that I'd made by hand, and it worked fine. But this works better. You know, I think you don't need a 3D printer, but I think it makes everything a little bit better.
It makes it easier.
You know? It just and you know it's right. You're not allowing for trying to allow for things that aren't jigs that aren't quite right, because you know you've got it spot on. So yeah, and I think if you can think of 3 uses you have for a 3D printer, then you need to get one, because you've got at least 200 uses in the real world when you get one. Yeah, and Arran, we can see his journey from I'd like one, should I? Can I justify it? To now he's just like the 3D printing wizard. You know.
That's probably a good part to mention. Another one I'm working on, and I think it's the same thing, that something that you've made that works okay, but then with a 3D printer you can get it precise. So when I shaping nuts, I do that on the disc sander. So I had one of these. So this is the newer version. So a little device to hold the nut so you don't sand your fingertips off. So I had made one out of MDF that was the approximate size and screwed together. But now I've got a 3D printed one, which I'm sort of working on. So there's just a couple of bolts going through with locking nuts. So it just comes apart. I could put in different nuts of different widths, and then it'll sit flat on the disc sander. So I'm not going to wear my fingers away. But little things. So there's a groove. It's sort of bowed a bit. That's why I've got to work out the next design. But there's a little groove in there, so the nut actually will sit in at right angles. It's not like just manually adjusting it to get it straight. I've also put the radius on, so not that the nut has to match the radius of the fretboard, but just as a guide when you're sort of shaping it, I know that I've got the perfect sort of line, and I can still use the half pencil to work out the depth. Little things, so like the back angle, obviously dropping the little shelf on the belt sander, on the disc sander, so I'll put which way is that going? A little bevel there, so when it sort of drops like that, it's at the right angle. And I've also made it 42 millimeters wide, so essentially the width of this is exactly the width of the nut. So I could then put it sideways and get as close to the edge as I can, knowing that the nut is going to be the right width. So I think that's the same as Glyn's sort of wax potting thing, that something that you kind of made, and my MDF version of this works fine, but it's literally made by hand with files and shaping. That was all done on Tinkercad over I think this was actually my first sort of thing that I designed, and now I can just fine tune it, and I could print, change the width if I want a nut that's a different size. I just do another one of these that's a bit wider, and I don't have to measure it. I could put the nut in there and just sand exactly to the side. So they're those little things that I just I look at things in my workshop and think, oh, I could kind of finesse. I think it's the finessing. You can just finesse something for no effort. You come in the evening and you sit down at your computer for half an hour and do a file, and then print it off and go to bed, and you get up in the morning and you go, all right, let's see if this works.
That is brilliant. I love that. Hey, I've just sorry, Dan. I've got quite an important question here about jigs. Do you have a name that you give all your jigs? Like, for instance, all my jigs are called the Something-O-Matic 2000, because that's the future apparently. So this would be called the Suckomatic 2000, or I've got the notes. And do you have a name that you call your jigs?
Like Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah.
No, I'm I'm a bit boring on my file naming, to be honest. The Suckomatic sounds very Wallace and Gromit, which is very cool. That's a kid. I'm missing a trick here.
I feel like that. This is a thing, Glyn. You've got me. Anything I make now, in the future, I will name.
Yeah, and interestingly, I've got jigs that I made in the 1990s that were called a something-o-matic 2000, and that's what it actually was. The feature. But yeah.
So what I'd be interested is there anybody watching or listening that might be able to leave a note in the comment? Every time I hear someone talk here, I'm inspired by what you can do. But is there anyone that's horrified by this? The idea that we're using computers to do this when we should be doing it by hand out of wood. I just wonder. There's got to be some tone wood person out there that absolutely loves the traditional way.
There is
I come across them all the time.
Oh,
not unless they're out there chopping trees down with their hands. It's just another tool, isn't it? Really, I mean, it's just another tool in the toolbox. I wouldn't say it replaces anything outright, but it's something definitely useful. And if you've got a tool which isn't useful, then it's not going to get used.
We did a live stream here, and we're talking about 3D print. No, we're talking about CNCs. And someone had said in the chat that they didn't use CNC. They did everything by hand, which I loved it. That idea. But that they couldn't use a CNC because their father or their grandfather who taught them these skills would be horrified at that. And I didn't say anything, but I was just sort of thinking it's just like, what would they thinking when the electric drill came out? Would their grandfather be horrified if they're using an electric drill to drill a hole instead of the old crank handle? And I sometimes sit back and I think if their father or grandfather was someone, it would be, I know what my father would be. He'd just look at me and sort of say, work smarter, not harder. And to me, that's exactly what it is. We're not cheating. We're not taking anything away. Okay, I am, but that's me. Yeah. You guys using them for tools and jigs and templates and things like that. To me, it's, you're not cheating. You're just working smarter. You're working more efficiently. And that's what it's all about.
Well, we're hearing, so
Jack.
El Padre's just asked me to extrapolate the logic that technology is cheating to not use a router, bouncer, or electric drill. Basically what you're saying. And what I was going to say on that note is, Arran's example just now. Clearly, Arran, you've made loads of nuts before, so you can do it. You can do it in a traditional way. But you seem very excited about this process of the 3D printed jig you've got that allows you to do everything so accurately. And anything that brings some sort of excitement or enjoyment or something different to what you're doing that makes you want to do more of it is excellent, I think. So basically, you're making something that's going to make you want to make more nuts. You're making a different way, but the end goal is really making guitars. Or maybe it's not. Maybe the end goal is making jigs. But the goal is making, really. And I
think that's part of it. My sort of journey has always been, if you can do it yourself, you should. Like I'll sort of see something, or someone will say, "Oh, we should pay someone to do something for us at home." It's like, I reckon I could do that myself. So that's kind of always been my sort of mindset. So when, sort of have been on this guitar building journey, it's the jigs are as much, of the enjoyment for me as well, rather than kind of, if I can build something myself and do it, then that's what I've always done. And it has been out of MDF and the tools that I've got now that I've got the 3D printer, little things like this, that at the end of the day, no one could tell the difference, how the nut was made. But for me, it streamlines the process, and I think it kind of takes that, what's the expression I've heard before? Like reduces the cognitive load. So when you want to put all your thought and energy into creative things into the guitar design, if you can take away a lot of the cognitive load away from the simple repetitive tasks, it kind of frees up that that sort of space. So they're the things I'm really enjoying to simplify the process. The fret radius jig. So I remember the first few guitars hand sanding with the radius beam taking an hour or 2 hours to get a radius, which wasn't perfect anyway because I'd put more pressure on one corner than the other on one side, and now to use this one the other day for the first time, and within sort of 10 minutes you've got a pretty using a good router bit, a consistent radius across, and then not much time sanding to get it down. So they're the things that I'm kind of really excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree that I used to hate radiusing, and then I've seen some other videos, but I saw your video on your original radiusing jig, and I made one based on yours because I thought it was brilliant, and I'm quite happy with what I've got. But now I want to make a 3D one because I feel like it's going to be slightly, or not slightly, it's going to be a step up, a better improvement that's going to allow me to be better at doing what I'm doing. But also, this is one of the things that I think to learn to use CAD, making a 3D radiusing jig seems like quite an easy starting step, especially as if you haven't seen Arran's video about it, he goes through all his ideas and iterations, which gives you loads of clues of how to do it yourself. But I just want to address El Padre's just put in the comments. These are devices that to reduce the amount of grunt work you need to do, then focus on the finessing of the thing you're working on in a limited time scenario, which most of us are restricted to. I totally agree. But what I want to try and get to the point is that I still think there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it the traditional way. There's lots of skill in doing it the traditional way. And for some people that have that time, or even if you don't have time, it just means everything takes a lot longer. Doing it that way may be the thing you want to do and the thing you get enjoyment out of. What one person might call grunt work, someone else might really enjoy doing. So I don't want to be dismissive of that. But what I find on the internet, and that's why I just asked that comment, is there's so many black or whites. There's people don't like doing it that way. They hate doing it that way. They really aggressively disagree with what you're doing and think you're stupid for doing it, and they can't see the in between. They'll say it's, as Ray was alluding to, it's a loss of traditional skills. It would make people in the past sad, whatever. Well, maybe it will, but also people in the past might also be excited about having all of these new jigs and tools to use that they don't know exist because they don't have that technology.
I think the purpose of
there's 1,001 ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
I mean, the purpose of a jig, how I see it, is to make you as good on a bad day as you are on a good day.
What a great description! Yes.
So you're consistent. It's harder to go wrong. When I was in college, so I learned guitar making and repair in a college in the UK, and I was doing this electric guitar making 2-year full-time qualification, and there were also violin makers there, and they were fascinating because they were very much, if it wasn't done this way 300 years ago, it's the wrong way to do it. They wouldn't have the idea of like plunger outers. They were really not. They didn't have any plunger outers in their workshop, and it was quite interesting kind of coming up against that. I haven't heard much about that since, and then you've got plunger outers and you've got CNC. Now, the difference really, I mean, is the anchor point, isn't it? It's either anchored by an organic object with fragile limbs, or it's anchored by something, it's going around a guide. It can be a physical template or an electronic, a CAD template, but it's the same. What's the difference? How many steps do you want to? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
but then
whatever.
I've had to defend myself a few times. I've had to defend myself a few times from making things on the CNC. I don't see why. I mean, some people get really bent out of shape about it, but I kind of feel like it's their problem, not mine.
I don't know about you, Jack. Like, I get it a lot as well. But I've almost. No, actually, I haven't almost. I have. I've gotten to the point now where I engage and I have fun. and I will stir that pot with them all day long, because at the end of the day, they're really proving nothing, and a lot of the time they're proving what they don't know as well. It's they like to sit there and talk about all this knowledge that they've got and how you should do it this way and that way. In fact, I actually saw the opposite occur in one group where essentially this one guy was arguing that all handcrafted guitars where there's no CNC or anything like that were all crap, because there's all human error put into it. And I'm sort of sitting back going, but I think you've taken this one a bit far, because oftentimes it's that human error that creates that machine. But
makes it individual.
Yeah.
And they've been around a while. Like the first, as far off the top of my head, the first production CNC'd electric guitar was in 1979. It was Peavey. It was was a really weighty T60 or something like that. Those stupidly heavy ash Peaveys. They were CNC'd, and when you take them apart, it's obvious they were CNC'd. They were made really nicely, but it doesn't matter. It's a piece of. It doesn't matter how you make the dust.
It was the PVT60.
Hey, look at that! Old guy knowledge. Woo!
Yeah. It was in 1977, and by 1978, they were the biggest producers of guitars in the United States.
And I said 79, so I was a bit out, but not far.
Well, I've used another robot to find that out, a bit of AI knowledge.
I tell you what, the most useful power tool in the workshop is the computer by a long way.
Yeah. And on that note, like on this note, like we're all having this conversation right here about like these technologies that exist today that we're taking advantage of. Like in 50 years, this conversation is going to be old fashioned, right? Like, yeah. The future of guitar design is not going to be with wood. That's not going to be with any kind of polymers. It's going to be assisted design. We're not going to be in CAD anymore, or not much. We're going to have assisted design. This is going to be mostly designed by AI. And the really custom guitars from the future will be all AI driven. And they'll be actually just, you'll hit a button and then the guitar will be made for you. Like that's the future of custom lutherie. Like we won't even get our hands dirty. We won't have to finish anything. There won't be any sanding. This is all old fashioned, and that's okay. Like when we think about using traditional methods and traditional tools, that's fine, but you're only ever going to make a traditional guitar with traditional methods and traditional tools.
Yeah.
Well, look, what I'd say is when I was a kid, the future was flying cars. And I've worked in schools for many years until recently, and kids always think the future is flying cars, but cars still have wheels. I think guitars are going to be made out of tone wood for many, many, many years. Although I agree with you, Mark, I feel like there's still going to be a real connection to tradition that's not going to die out, because there's that whole industry and kind of knowledge or ideas that people have that won't break away. But at some point it will break away, I hope. But I doubt it will be.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we're going to have wood guitars forever. We're going to have wood violins forever. That's never going away. But this conversation we're having now about technologies, this conversation is going to change in 50 years. Like the new batch of people live streaming in 50 years will not be talking about 3D printers and CNCs. They'll be talking about something else that we can't even imagine.
And it probably won't be live streaming in 50 years. It'll be something else, Mark, instead of
right. Exactly.
Hey, let's make a date. 50 years from now, we'll get back. Yeah.
I'll fly over to you on my 3D printed plane, and we'll have a chat about it. Yeah, because even 20 years ago, when I was at university, I worked for an artist who made sculptures using rapid prototyping, 3D printing technology. And at the time, he was invited by a big industrial company to use their technology because it was so unique and so hard to access. And now it's become what we're doing now, everyday thing. So yeah, maybe we can encourage people. Hey, look, well, back onto the jigs. There's something that I noticed I can't find anywhere, which surprised me. I would have thought that with the way you're all talking about how you use CAD, taking a 3D design of a guitar, dropping it into CAD, making it just into a template would be so easy. But I can't see anyone that makes 3D printed router templates. Am I just missing something? Are they out there? I've just missed them. Like for
It'd be
pickup
kind of
routers.
big, wouldn't it?
That'd be so. Look, there you go.
Yeah.
I experimented with these. So for the for one of the recent builds, it was like, well, I'll give it a go. And it's probably like a plastic kind of thing that it worked for me. But I just attached them with masking tape and super glue. When I removed it after I'd finished the routing, it came off very easily. So it could be, how the tape attaches to the different textures of the 3D print. But certainly, and look, I think I did 3 different cavities using those or variations of those. And yeah, when I removed it with the masking tape, it didn't feel like it was on that securely. And if I had known that at the start, I probably wouldn't have put the router in the middle of it. But as I said, it's probably the type of plastic and the texture, the sticking surface, all those kind of things would infect it.
Did you print it onto a smooth surface? Maybe was it printed on a textured surface or?
Yeah, textured. Yeah, the same bed, the Bamboo Lab A1 that I've got. So, I think experimenting
on a smooth.
Yeah. Yep. I'll have to investigate different types of plates and things. But as a one-off, yeah, I was okay with it. But it was like, I think.
Because I was surprised how many 3D printed radiusing blocks there are out there. But that's like the next step for me of lutherie, of guitar building. Most people might start with body stuff, and just not to see a basic pickup routing template everywhere sort of surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, really, isn't this a laser cutting issue?
Yeah, but if you've got a 3D printer, why wouldn't you just do that as well?
Yeah. I mean, I've got one here that I made. Yeah, one I made the other day for something, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could do. I was just sort of surprised. Maybe I was going to be proven wrong, but already Owen in the chat said he uses them. You two have done the Arran and Glyn.
I mean, my thought with this is, which is for a pickup cavity, would be I would do a flush trim cut onto acrylic. So I've got like 6mm acrylic, and I would make that the template. I'd design it like this because it's quicker, and use this as the template to make the template.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because then it's solid, it's permanent. If I could use it for forever.
That makes
So
sense.
you might have seen me looking around my office at the moment. And that's because I'm trying to figure out where I'll put them. But one of the things I'd done was, okay, I make the guitars out of jigsaw puzzles, but I'd actually made a handful of router templates for neck pockets, the bridge, and the pickups for Strat and Telly. Basically, that neck pocket, that style bridge, that all interlocked with each other, using it like a jigsaw puzzle shape. But it was effectively, you could pick the parts that you wanted and then join them all up, and then you dropped one piece on top of your body, and it had the neck pocket was marked out, the neck pickup was marked out. You could choose whichever neck pickup you wanted, whether it was like a Telly, a single coil, soap bar. They were just interchangeable pieces that all locked in, and that was So that's one project I've been working on, and I found it useful when I am working with wood, which doesn't happen that often, but does happen.
I mean, because that what you're talking about is exactly what I had in my mind as something I thought I would want to do, and I was just surprised I couldn't see them everywhere. And that's sort of what you've been doing, isn't it, Arran? Or maybe not. Maybe you've been
look, The template, the router template, it was just a test, basically, for the Transformers guitar that I'm making. It was a new size cavity, and I couldn't be bothered or didn't want to make one out of MDF and cut it like that. So I, just printed one off to see how I'd go. But I think it was the textured surface or the way I attached it, the type of tape that I'd used didn't feel very secure. But there's obviously ways that you can do it, and to have have those sort of templates printed would be certainly very valuable.
Oh, hey,
For what it's worth, if that material, if that PLA was the matte finished PLA,
yep,
then you'll have a hard time getting tape to stick to it, because the way they make that matte and lose all its gloss is they add, I think it's between 4 to 5% talc.
Yep. Okay. Interesting.
So
this one would have been, what colour was that? White. Yes, that would have been just the basic PLA. Yeah. Oh, that's good to know.
Okay. Yeah. The basic PLA has an oil in it.
Yeah.
On a slightly different note, Daniel, with your reluctance to jump into Tinkercad, just one other thing is you can save a file either for 3D printing or for laser cutting. So however you want to go to a laser cutter for inlays or stuff, you don't have to learn anything else.
Yeah. I want to just clarify, my reluctance is basically because I've got a deadline of the end of February to write this book, and I'm currently some mornings getting up at 5 and some evenings going to bed at 11 and just working through. And the idea of all these ideas that I want to do that aren't the book need to be pushed aside. Everything has to be focused at the moment. And then I realise everything has to be focused after that on trying to finish and sell the guitars that I've been building for the book as demos. So to do something else which potentially may speed up the process or make it more exciting, more interesting, right now is something I've got to try to avoid, because I'm very, very good at being distracted by new things and interesting things and not finishing old things, which, as I've said many times, is not very useful for running a business. I need to finish. Your discipline is admirable, mate. I haven't got it yet. I'm trying. Trying. No, good on you. No, good on you. You're right. Oh, Mark, you're muted.
Hey, Daniel, on your Workbench Wednesday video, you were showing some of your 3D printed, I think there was a 3D printed guitar that you had painted. You're showing all your painted guitars.
Yeah.
But I think it was one of Ray's models that you had painted. And the finish looked amazing. Can you talk about, just real quick, how you finished that particular guitar?
Yeah, so I've actually got 2 versions of Ray's guitar that I printed off. One of them I've just sprayed white, ready to do another finish on, which is a marbling finish, a bit like a swirl painting finish basically, which I hope is going to accentuate all the layers and all the joins, because the paint I'm using on that is super thin, so hopefully it will pull in certain areas. So based on what we talked about before, the idea that it's going to celebrate the printing process. But then the other one, what I've realized is for the book, and I'm going to include this in the book, because in the book I want to talk about the idea of some people just maybe want to experiment and use guitars as an art, a canvas. So buying secondhand guitars, buying kit guitars, but actually 3D printing a body is cheaper than buying a body. So it is an alternative, but to get that nice finish on it, like a more traditional guitar, what I had to do was, first of all, use, I think in America it might be called Bondo, or unless that's a brand name, but it's basically a flexible car body filler that's designed for repairing bumpers. So I always like sand everything to make sure it adheres to it. I put that over, sand it back, do another coat, sand it back. And really it's just spreading it around so it sort of fills the layer lines, fills the cracks a bit. And then primed it. But to prime it, I did, and Owen suggested this before, an adhesion promoter, which is designed to help plastics bond with the paint. So I spray that on, then put the primer on. But then as I would do with wood, sometimes I use primer on wood without using grain filler. You then sand back and do a few layers of the primer, and that slowly fills it up. So I think in the end, I had after the Bondo, one session of priming, sanded back, then a second session of priming and sanded back, and it was smooth enough to then take the first base coat of paint and just look like a nice wooden finish body. But then the effect I got on it, I did a splatter painting on it. So I did that in 2 ways. But unless you wanted to hear about that, is that what you wanted to specifically hear about, or was it just how I got it smooth?
Yeah, how you got it smooth.
Yeah. So and I think I've only watched a few videos, but lots of people that do cosplay making, and I've been watching cosplay videos for years because I find it fascinating. They use various different materials, but I've noticed more and more elements of that are 3D printed as well. Like Scott was talking about a couple of times he's been on the show here, 3D printing a clone troop helmet in the background. A lot of those use that kind of body filler on it as well to help smooth the lines. It seems to work really well. So it's not that complicated a process. It's a bit messy, and it uses. You can hand sand it, or you can power sand it, but it doesn't use that many tools that you need for woodworking necessarily. So it is a step away from 3D printing, as in it's messy. But if you're going to be painting anyway, you're going to be potentially making a mess.
So, Daniel, when you get a chance, you probably need to have a bit of a Google and look on YouTube for vapor smoothing, which is done using acetone vapor on ABS and ASA printed parts.
Yes, I think you might have mentioned that before, but I'm printing PLA. So can you use it on that?
When you move up to ABS, when you're ready to start printing in ABS, buy yourself a couple of gallons of acetone. Yeah.
I've got many gallons of acetone for other things that I'm working on at the moment.
Somehow I'm not surprised.
the amount of chemicals I've got at the moment in my I've got a fireproof unit that I store all my paints and stuff in just in case. But it's overflowing at the moment. I'm a bit paranoid about the safety of my spray booth. Because I've never worked on so many guitars in one go. But the 3D printing has been brilliant for that because it is much quicker. Even with the finishing, it's much quicker than making a body by hand. If I had a CNC, maybe that would speed it up as well.
Probably.
Make one out of wood. But it's been good, and also it's been fun learning how the printer works because I've learned a few things about my printer and about the process from just printing off so many parts. One of them is I've learned how to clean the nozzle. My nozzle got really clogged up. I think partly from the ironing it was doing. It just seemed to have gone everywhere around the top of it. Hey, look,
that ironing does clog up nozzles if you're not careful.
One thing we haven't directly talked about with the jigs is there are companies that sell their 3D printed jigs printed, so you don't have to have a printer for it, because it's not like 3D printing is you can do it at home as an alternative to the proper tools. They are the proper tools, and String Pluckery that I got this from, they make a really complicated looking 3D printed router sled. It sort of feels not over-engineered. It feels like it's going to work really well, but it's much more complicated than Arran's one, which also looks like it's going to work really well. So it's sort of, what's the difference there? But they sell them 3D printed, and they come. And I think I saw another company that sell them 3D printed, and you just assemble it yourself at home. So it seems like another way of producing things for selling as well, the 3D printing, not just for doing it at home. Is there anything we've missed out from the conversation today? And again, if anyone's watching in the future and you want to hear more 3D printed stuff, because we do ramble a bit, I think, or I do anyway. If you've got any questions that you want to hear again, let us know.
One of the other things I've been printing, which was on the first things I got into, was the storage. So the grid, I found the Gridfinity system. So you print the grids and put them in your drawers. So I went crazy. My drawers are starting to fill up. So little things like holders for radius gauges, So that one there, that's pretty straightforward. So the Goodfinity bins, there's websites that allow you to make the base, and then you just basically fill it with whatever you want. I've got some larger ones holding all those kind of things that we've all got other radius gauges and fret rockers and Allen keys. This is a cool little spoke wheel cast rod adjuster, which I kind of put in the front there. So they're the fun things that I've been sort of doing slowly, just going through, filling all the drawers, rather than the tools are reasonably organised for different kind of sections, but it's just fun. You spend half an hour designing something, print it off, and in the morning get out and stick it in your garage, and it looks nice. So that's the storage is something that I've enjoyed playing around with as well.
I've got to say that Goodfinity and systems like that, so I've been using multi-board. They're one of the things I like about the open source, because someone's designed the system, and now there are thousands and thousands of variations of things that use that system, and it's so clever and so almost ubiquitous now across the 3D printing sites that I've been on, that you can get all these things that become compatible. And that the multi-board I'm using seems to be a way of getting all the different types of wall-mounted systems to become compatible with each other. And I just think it's really great that you can think of something you need. Someone's probably made it to fit on your system. If not, you've got the basis of the system there that you can just edit to fit what you need. And then I guess what I'll do if I ever do start making things is then I'll just put them up for free for other people to use, because it seems to be that's the community that's out there. I love that.
So just one of the things that I use 3D printing for a lot for with guitars, other than making them, is that it gives me the ability to have basically pick guards and scratch plates in any color that I want, any ply that I want. Like some of you, probably think that everything that's 3D printed has that sort of that rough texture on it that you can sort of see there, and that's gonna. There you go. You can see it all in there. But when you actually get right down into it, you can get a perfectly smooth, flat finish on your part. Actually, there's a couple of lines in there, and we'll go around that side where they're less visible. But as you can see, then 3-ply pickguard in bronze with a white trim. When I'm looking around trying to find pickguard material, I can't find that color combination.
I was
I
very
can't find green and blue laminate or whatever I want. But with the 3D printer, you can have it, and you can have it you cut for yourself. Whatever switches or pickups or hardware you want to mount, you can put it in there.
I was super impressed with the quality of the pickguard I printed from your guitar, which looks like 3-ply, and I could instantly see how beneficial it was to be able to print and, exactly as you said, customize it to fit any pickups. But the way you'd done it, if I remember correctly, is it was actually really 1-ply with a little insert around the edge that made it look like 3-ply. Very, really clever.
I don't know if you can see it on this one. Hang on. Here we go. No, you can't really see it on this one, sort of. But you can see how it's. Hang on. You can see where it's 3-ply there, but if you look in through the side here into the holes, you see that it's all solid white. Essentially, black is a 1.5 millimeter body cut into the model. So instead of doing like a millimeter of white millimeter of black, and then another millimeter thickness on top of white. The whole thing is white, just with a black strip around the outside edge. So,
and of course, so easy to change colours on. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hey, so look, based on what Ray said and what we've said before, we'll probably have another episode where we talk a bit more about CAD at some point. And I love the idea, Ray, of doing a stream with you one day where we watch you building up a guitar. That'd be brilliant. I've linked to everyone's social medias, etc., in the description, where you can also find links to, for example, Jack's shop, where you can see the things that he was talking about, and Mark's, where I got these from. But also something we didn't talk about is Mark's got in his shop the Passerelle bridge. So 3D printing things that actually you use when you're playing the instruments as well as building them. It's a whole other world, I guess. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Could I just, there's something I heard about a week ago, which I think is kind of pertinent to the whole luthier thing, because of all the different skills that everyone has and different materials are used, and it's fascinating. But the phrase "jack of all trades," I heard the complete version, and I never heard it before. So
it's very different, isn't it?
Yeah. So the complete version is "jack of all trades, master of none," but oftentimes better than master of one. Isn't that great?
I'm going to leave it there. Thank you, Glyn. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi.